That day, I had only intended to accompany my colleague to the billionaire's house to broaden my horizons. But unexpectedly, I ended up becoming a live-in maid for the richest family in the area. My name is Vong Tui Hua, and I've been a maid for many years. If I had to say I have any special talent, it would probably only be cleaning windows. My colleagues even nicknamed me Spider-Man, because whether it's a 10th floor or 20th floor window, as long as I strapped on a safety harness, I dared to climb out and clean it until it was sparkling clean. Besides that, I don't know English. Nor do I know how to bake Western-style bread. My cooking skills are only outstanding when it comes to spicy dishes from my hometown. Unfortunately, the rich don't eat spicy food, so that skill is useless. Initially, I didn't intend to go for the interview, but my colleague insisted. Go take a look. The billionaire's family is hiring live-in staff. I heard the salary is high and the work is light. Maybe you'll broaden your horizons. So I was dragged along amidst the excited chatter of my colleagues. Everyone was eager. Some said that working there for a month was equivalent to what an average person earns in a year. Others had heard rumors that the ladies' used handbags, when resold, could be enough to buy a house in the countryside. The Xie family's mansion was so vast that I had to look up in awe the moment I entered. Crystal chandeliers shone brightly, like something out of a movie, and the polished stone floors were so gleaming, I was afraid I'd leave footprints if I stepped too hard. And that young lady, she was truly dazzling. She wore a simple white dress, her black hair gently cascading over her shoulders, her delicate face as soft as a magnolia blossom in early spring. She looked gentle, yet her eyes held an indescribable coldness and weariness. That interview was incredibly strange. The lady only asked one question. As a maid, what is the most important thing? The person in front of me immediately answered smoothly, professional ethics. The next person, professional skills, discipline, and a spirit of service. Someone even boldly added, most importantly, you must absolutely not seduce the boss. The whole room chuckled awkwardly, but the lady only frowned, clearly displeased. My colleague, who was with me, gave a similar answer. The lady lowered her eyes, her expression indifferent. For some reason, I blurted out, ugly, taciturn, and competent. The whole room fell silent. Standing in the middle of the group, I honestly explained, beautiful people easily cause trouble. Those who talk too much easily gossip. As a maid, you just need to be diligent and do your job well. The lady looked up at me. Her gaze swept over me from head to toe, then suddenly curved her lips into a smile. Good, I've decided on you. I stood there stunned for a few seconds. Decided? And so, amidst the astonished and envious gazes of many, I moved into the Xie family's mansion. On the first night after signing the contract, the madam asked me what salary I wanted. I nervously held up 5 fingers. My calculations were simple. 15,000 yuan was already a dream salary. Unexpectedly, the madam paused for a few seconds and then asked, 15,000 yuan? Is that enough? I almost dropped my glass of water. 15,000 yuan? Is this the world of the rich? I frantically shook my head. Enough! More than enough! In my eyes at that moment, the madam was like a bodhisattva descended from heaven, bestowing money to alleviate suffering. The next morning, I woke up at dawn to familiarize myself with the work. The person who led me around was Aunt Lin, the Xie family's longtime housekeeper. She wore a dark cheongsam, her hair neatly styled in a bun, and walked briskly and impeccably. As she led me down the long corridor, bathed in the early morning sunlight, she softly instructed, the most important thing here is to be discreet and speak little. The master and mistress are both busy and rarely home. We just need to take good care of the young master and mistress. She paused slightly, her eyes showing a hint of embarrassment. The mistress is young. She doesn't understand many things. We must pay close attention to her. Seemingly realizing she had spoken out of turn, Aunt Lin quickly corrected herself. Oh, it's nothing. The master and mistress have a very good relationship. It's just that outsiders like to spread rumors. I blinked at her. For some reason, Aunt Lynn's demeanor resembled the gossip-spreading supporting characters in those cheesy romance novels I often read. Before I could think much, we arrived at the dining room. As soon as I entered, I immediately understood why Aunt Lynn had said what she did. A boy, about 5 or 6 years old, was standing on a chair, pointing directly at the lady of the house and shouting, "You cruel stepmother! I don't want to drink milk! I want my real mother!" The lady sat opposite, her face expressionless, but her eyes filled with helplessness. "Drink it quickly. You have to go to school after you drink it." The little boy pouted, deliberately pouring the milk into a saucer and sticking out his tongue to tease her. "I won't drink it. You just want to torment me." I stood behind them, my blood boiling. "That's my lucky charm. Anyone who dares to bully the lady of this house is touching my salary." So I immediately stepped forward, hands on hips, glaring at the boy. "If Madam wanted to torment you, she would have given you rice water to drink. Why waste money giving you milk?" The boy was stunned. I continued, my voice like a machine gun. "She cares about you. That's why she wants you to eat and drink properly so you can grow up healthy. You're so young and already so clueless. Who will be able to tolerate you later?" Lynn's face turned pale. "Little Wong, what did you say to the young master?" Before I could retort, Madam spoke softly. Aunt Wong meant well. Her voice was very soft, but somehow it silenced the entire room. The little boy pouted, glaring at me angrily, but finally obediently picked up another glass of milk and drank it all. Madam then breathed a sigh of relief, lowering her head to eat the small, steamed bun in front of her. Meanwhile, I stood beside her, a strange feeling rising in my heart. This young lady doesn't seem to be living such an easy life as she appears. After breakfast that day, I officially began my life as a maid in the sprawling, labyrinthine mansion of the Jie family. During the day, the house was so quiet that you could hear the sound of water flowing in the fish pond outside. The master usually left early, and the mistress mostly stayed home, caring for the young master or reading in the glass-enclosed room on the second floor. Although there were many servants, they all spoke softly and moved as quietly as cats, as if even the slightest noise would be considered a taboo. But where there are people, there is trouble. In less than 2 days, I had overheard almost all of the dramatic history of the Xie family. People said that the master and mistress's marriage was a business arrangement. The mistress's family was once prestigious, but her mother died early, and her father remarried, so her status in the house was no different from that of an outsider. As for the master of the Xie family, he was known for being cold, taciturn, and had never truly loved anyone. What everyone talked about most was the young master. The young master had taken him in and raised him since his university days. No one knew who the child's mother was, only that it was rumored to be the son of the master's white moonlight, the woman he loved so deeply that he couldn't forget her for years. Because of this, the entire upper class secretly mocked the mistress. Everyone thought she was just a wife in name only. I squatted in the laundry room, hugging a basin of clothes and sighing heavily. My 150,000 yuan seems to be in danger. If this marriage falls apart, the first one to lose their livelihood will be me. No way. I, Wang Tuihua, am a very principled person. Whoever I'm paid, I must protect them. Since that's the case, I will personally act as a matchmaker to save this marriage. That evening, I saw Mr. Xie in person for the first time. The man entered through the door in a perfectly tailored black suit, tall and with long, straight legs. His face was cold, his nose high, his eyes so deep and sharp that even a slight glance was enough to make others tense. I secretly gasped in admiration. He's truly handsome. Even if he's a carrot that's been gnawed on by others, he's still a top-quality carrot. As soon as Mr. Xie returned, the young master immediately rushed to hug his legs. His previously cold expression softened slightly. Only Mrs. Xie remained seated on the sofa reading, never once looking up from beginning to end. The atmosphere between them was incredibly strange. Not like husband and wife, neither were they strangers. It was more like everyone wanted to get closer but didn't know how to start a conversation. I watched, feeling anxious for them. That evening, after cleaning up, I secretly carried a small chair out to the hallway next to their bedroom. my 15,000 yuan. I absolutely had to keep it safe. I sat watching all night, clutching a cup of strong tea, my eyes wide open like an owl's. But the room was eerily quiet. No talking, no laughter, not even a hint of the newlyweds' presence. At midnight, I clutched my chest in despair. It's over. Mr. Wu really does have a problem. With such a beautiful lady, he still doesn't care? Isn't this a waste of God's gift? The next morning, I immediately called Uncle Wu back home. Uncle Wu, do you still have your old donkey? There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line. Yes, but why are you asking? Butcher it and send me its most precious part. Oh, and by the way, if anyone else in the village still has an old donkey, please gather them for me. Uncle Wu panicked. Little Wang, you're not married yet. I seriously replied, I'm doing something important that concerns someone else's family happiness. After hanging up, I still felt uneasy, so I made Mr. Wu some oyster omelets for breakfast. 3 days later, a package arrived from home. Looking at the ingredients in my hands, I was so moved I almost cried. It truly was a display of neighborly kindness. For the sake of my wife's future, I decided to pour all my family's inherited wealth into this. That entire afternoon, the Xie family's kitchen was filled with the pungent aroma of traditional Chinese medicine. I stood tending the fire for 2 hours, finally managing to simmer just one bowl of thick, rich broth. 3 strands of rope simmered until only the essence remained. I carried the bowl of broth to the study with an extremely solemn expression. The master was sitting at his desk under the soft yellow light. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing his muscular arms, and the light made his high, straight nose appear even colder. I placed the bowl of broth on the table. Master, this is the broth my wife asked me to prepare for you. He looked up at me for a few seconds. His gaze was so sharp I almost thought I'd been discovered. Thankfully, he eventually picked up the bowl and drank it all in one gulp. I stood beside him, silently admiring him. He managed to swallow such a hard-to-drink soup. If this isn't love, then what is? That night, I carried my small chair out to the hallway again to keep watch. This time, there was finally some movement inside the room. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. I was so excited that I clutched my coffee cup, trembling. There was hope. After the shower, the next step would surely follow. But 5 minutes later, everything went silent again. Besides the sound of water, there was nothing else. I sat there stunned. That's it? Impossible. A bowl of such potent, nourishing soup, and it was only used for showering? I was so angry I slammed my hand on the chair. That night, the gentleman showered 5 times, and I drank 3 cups of coffee so bitter I almost cried. But nothing happened. Since Mr. and Mrs. Xie truly resolved their misunderstanding, the atmosphere in the Xie household has changed noticeably. The once vast villa, usually as cold and sterile as a luxury hotel, now feels more lively. In the mornings, the dining room is filled with hushed conversations, and in the evenings, the hallway lights stay on later as people wait for each other to return home. Even the longtime servants are breathing a sigh of relief, no longer constantly worried about the master's Cold War. As for me, Wang Chuehua, the one who contributed most to this great matchmaking endeavor, I'm naturally living a happier life. Every morning, seeing my bank balance increase, I feel that life is truly worth living. Mrs. Shi has a particular fondness for spicy food lately. Today she wants braised beef blood with satay sauce. Tomorrow she'll ask for grilled fish with green peppers. As for the gentleman, needless to say, he clearly couldn't handle spicy food, his eyes and nose running. Yet he still sat there, trying his best to pick up each bite with his chopsticks, his ears turning bright red as he ate. Once, it was so spicy that he had to drink 3 glasses of cold milk. And yet he still managed to smile at his wife. If Kiki likes it, then I want to learn to like it too. Hearing that, I was chopping chili peppers in the kitchen and was so moved I almost chopped my hand. Good heavens, the master's mouth finally learned to speak human words. The young master has also changed a lot. Before, he would call the mistress wicked stepmother. but now he follows her around like a little tail. The other day, after school, he happily ran into the house with a crooked paper flower. Kiki's mother, the teacher, praised my craft. The mistress was stunned for a few seconds before bending down to hug the boy. Her eyes were red, and she gently stroked his head as if afraid of hurting him. I watched from afar, my heart melting. This child is actually very well behaved. It's just that he heard too much nonsense from outsiders before, which made him stubbornly defy the mistress. Now that he understands, he naturally knows who truly loves him. However, the peaceful life didn't last long before something happened. That day, I was cleaning the windows on the second floor when I saw a black luxury car pull up in the courtyard. A woman stepped out, wearing a long white dress, with lightly curled hair and an elegant, gentle demeanor. As soon as they saw her, the servants downstairs immediately started whispering. I heard this is the real white moonlight of the master. The one the master liked for many years. This time it's going to be a big deal. I immediately straightened my window cleaning tool. What? The person in question has appeared? The woman entered the house with a very gentle smile, her voice as soft as water. Ah, Shen, long time no see. The master, who was reading documents in the living room, looked up. His expression was so calm that there was no hint of emotion. You're back in the country? Just a polite question like that, but the outsiders weren't going to think so simply. Even Aunt Lynn started to look worriedly towards the madam. The lady was sitting by the window, arranging flowers. Her movements paused slightly, but she maintained a calm and polite expression. The other woman turned to look at the lady and smiled. This is Ms. Key, right? I've heard Thun mention you a lot. I could already smell the scent of green tea. Mentioned a lot? Mentioned how? Mentioned that he still remembered his ex, even after getting married? I was about to rush down when the gentleman spoke coldly. I think you've misunderstood. The entire living room fell silent. The gentleman closed his documents, stood up, walked straight to the lady, and naturally took her hand. I've never mentioned you to Kiki, nor have I mentioned Kiki to you. Furthermore, please call me Mr. Ta. The other woman's face stiffened. As for me, I almost wanted to applaud on the spot. Excellent, excellent! He's truly my mistress's husband. But the fatal blow was yet to come. The gentleman looked at her, his voice calm but clear. That year I helped you only because you were the sister of a deceased classmate. There was no other affection involved. I hope you won't mislead my wife later. That one sentence silenced the entire living room. The lady looked up at him, her eyes trembling slightly. Clearly, even she hadn't expected the gentleman to be so blunt. The other woman's face turned pale. She forced a few words of laughter and quickly left. Only after she was out of sight did I breathe a sigh of relief, feeling more tense than watching an 80-episode palace drama. That evening, I specially prepared an extra table of spicy food to celebrate our successful marriage defense. My husband ate until his lips were bright red, yet he still wouldn't stop. My wife looked at him, both amused and helpless. Don't push yourself too hard. My husband immediately replied seriously, No, I have to adapt to my wife's tastes. I was carrying soup past and overheard this, almost choking with laughter. Just then, our little son suddenly asked, resting his chin on his hand, Dad, will we have a baby someday? The atmosphere at the dinner table instantly fell silent. My wife blushed, lowering her head to drink water. My husband cleared his throat and answered seriously, If Kiki's mother agrees, then we will. The boy immediately exclaimed excitedly, I want a little sister! A little sister just like Kiki's mother! I stood there listening, my head filled with the sound of exploding fireworks. It's over. There's really going to be a joyous occasion in this family. And I, Wang Tuihua, must be the first to prepare the best prenatal care menu for the madam. Since that battle of the white moonlight, the madam's position in the Xie family has been almost as solid as a rock. Those outsiders who used to secretly gossip that her marriage was just a business arrangement are now completely silent. After all, everyone has seen firsthand how the master defended his wife in front of everyone. And men, once they've opened their minds, are truly terrifying. Before, the master was as cold as a 1,000-year-old block of ice, only knowing how to go to work and then return to his study. Now, it's completely different. He even video calls the madam when he's on business trips, texts her to ask if she's eaten, and sometimes even sends her pictures of his lunch during meetings. I stood there watching and got goosebumps. It's true that when you're in love, even a CEO is no different from a teenage boy. Once I brought fruit up to the room, and as soon as I opened the door, I saw the boss hugging his wife from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder, his voice soft and affectionate. "Kiki, I'm leaving work early today to take you out to eat." The Furen, madam, was reading a book, and when he hugged her, her ears turned red. She gently pushed him away. "Aunt Wang is still here." The Furen, Mr., turned his head to look at me, his expression incredibly calm. "Aunt Wang isn't a stranger." I immediately understood and turned away, closing the door quietly as I left. But inwardly, I was overjoyed. That's it! That's exactly it! Keep giving me sweet treats! Not long after, the family received another piece of good news. That day, after eating only a few bites of breakfast, the Furen suddenly covered her mouth and ran to the bathroom. I thought she had a stomachache from eating too much spicy food, but the family doctor came to check on her and then happily announced the news. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. She's pregnant." I was holding a tablecloth and my hand trembled, dropping it to the floor. Pregnant? My fish was successfully delivered? The Xie family is about to have a baby girl? The doctor was stunned for a few seconds, as if unable to process the news, then suddenly jumped up. The usually calm man's eyes were visibly red. "Really?" The doctor chuckled. "I've been doing this for 20 years. This can't be wrong." The doctor turned to look at his wife. His gaze softened, almost melting. His wife was also bewildered, her hand unconsciously placed on her stomach, as if she couldn't quite believe it herself. The young master was the most reactive. He shouted excitedly and ran around the living room. "I'm going to have a little sister. I'm going to be a big brother." I was so moved that I stood wiping away tears in the kitchen. Oh my God, this family finally has a day like this. As soon as the news reached the old house, my grandmother immediately called. Less than an hour later, the old woman appeared, leaning on her cane, her face beaming with a smile brighter than a blooming flower. "Kiki, you've worked so hard, my dear daughter-in-law." After saying that, she turned and clasped my hand tightly. "Aunt Wang, you've worked so hard too." Immediately afterwards, my phone chimed. Another huge bonus had arrived. I clutched the phone, my legs turning to jelly. This wasn't just being a maid anymore. This was clearly a lucrative profession. Since Madame became pregnant, the entire Xie family entered a state of national treasure protection. Mr. C was almost going crazy. If Madame coughed even once, he would immediately call the family doctor. He felt sorry for her if she stood for more than 5 minutes. Even when going down the stairs, he wanted to carry her. Once, Madame couldn't take it anymore and blushing pushed him away. "I'm just pregnant, I'm not paralyzed." Mr. Xie remained incredibly serious. "No, I read in a book that pregnant women need careful care." I stood beside them, listening, and almost burst out laughing. The man who used to be too shy to even say he liked her is now a true wife-obsessed fan. But the thing that gave me the biggest headache was the food. After getting pregnant, my wife's appetite changed drastically. One day she was craving spicy food so much she ate a whole table full of chili peppers. The next day she felt nauseous at the smell of pepper. At 2 in the morning, she suddenly wanted spicy noodles with strawberries. And the next morning she demanded fish soup with durian. My husband listened without batting an eye. If Kiki wants to eat it, there must be a reason. I stood in the kitchen holding a durian, feeling desperate. Reason? This was clearly torture. But my monthly salary of 300,000 yuan made me grit my teeth and endure it all. Once, I was simmering soup in the kitchen when I heard laughter coming from the living room. I peeked out and saw my husband squatting in front of the sofa, his ear pressed against my wife's belly. "Daughter, it's me, your father." The Fujian blushed and lightly kicked him. "You know it's a girl?" The Fujian immediately nodded seriously. "It's definitely a girl, just like you." The young master beside them chimed in. She has to look like mom to be beautiful. Seeing that scene, my heart melted like noodles. Who would have thought that this family, once as cold as an ice cellar, would now be so warm? That night, I lay in bed in my small room at the old house, applying a face mask while calculating the money I had saved over the years. I had already bought land in the countryside. I was just waiting for retirement to grow vegetables and raise chickens for my old age. But thinking about watching Mr. and Mrs. hand out gifts every day and receiving such a high salary, I suddenly felt maybe I shouldn't retire yet. Time flies so fast that no one even notices it. In the blink of an eye, the lady's belly had begun to protrude noticeably. Being thin, the pregnancy was even more noticeable. Every time the lady walked down the hallway in her loose dress, the gentleman followed closely behind, as if escorting a national treasure. If she missed a single step on the stairs, he would turn pale. One day, the lady was sitting eating grapes in the garden when it started to rain. The gentleman rushed out of the house so quickly that I thought something serious had happened. It turned out he was just worried about a few raindrops getting on his wife. He took off his vest and covered the lady's head with it, then carried her straight into the house. The lady was so embarrassed she lightly hit him on the shoulder. "You're overdoing it." The gentleman, however, was incredibly serious. "What if you caught a cold?" I stood beside them, watching, and just wanted to roll my eyes. Where was the man who used to be so adamant about not saying he liked his wife? Now they were inseparable, like glue. But after seeing it so often, I got used to it. I even started to feel proud, as if I had personally raised this couple. By the 7th month, the wife began to have trouble sleeping. She would often wake up in the middle of the night because of leg cramps. Each time this happened, the husband would immediately get up and massage her legs, and carefully consult documents to find out what pregnant women needed to pay attention to. One night, as I passed by the bedroom to bring her warm milk, I overheard my husband softly coaxing her. "Kiki, be a good girl. The doctor said she'll be a little fussy this month." His voice was so gentle it gave me goosebumps. My wife leaned on her husband's shoulder, sighing softly. "This baby is definitely just like you, always bothering people." My husband immediately retorted seriously. "No way, our daughter is very well behaved." I stood outside the door with the tray of milk, feeling like I shouldn't even be there. But the most chaotic event in the house was the day my wife went into labor. That day, I was simmering chicken soup in the kitchen when I heard my husband's panicked cry from upstairs. "Aunt Wang, call the doctor quickly!" I dropped the ladle and rushed out. My wife was sitting on the sofa, clutching her stomach, her face pale, her forehead covered in cold sweat. The doctor was even more panicked than she was, his hands trembling so much he almost dropped his phone. "Where's the birthing bag? Where's the car? Has the doctor arrived yet?" The man, usually so calm, was now speaking incoherently. I had to turn and scold the doctor while supporting the lady. "Sir, please calm down. The lady is the one giving birth, not you." The young master standing beside them was so scared his eyes were red. "Is Kiki's mother in a lot of pain?" The lady tried to force a smile and patted the boy's head. "It's all right." But as soon as she said that, she winced in pain. The doctor immediately bent down and lifted the lady up. I swear, since I've known him, I've never seen him so distraught. All the way to the hospital, he held the lady's hand tightly, his eyes red as if he were about to cry. The lady was in so much pain she could barely speak, only gently squeezing his hand. The gentleman bent down and kissed her forehead repeatedly. "Kiki, don't be afraid. I'm here." I sat in front of them watching, and felt tense too. At the hospital, the gentleman insisted on going into the delivery room with them. The doctor had barely opened the door when, less than half an hour later, a panicked nurse's voice rang out from inside. "Calm down, family!" I thought something had happened to the lady, but a moment later, a nurse came out with a helpless expression. The expectant mother's husband was crying so loudly that we had to ask him to leave. I stood there frozen. "What? Mr. Xie? Crying?" Sure enough, a few minutes later, Mr. Xie was wheeled out of the delivery room. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, and he looked completely unlike a CEO. He sat in the hallway, his hands covering his head, his voice hoarse. I don't want to give birth anymore. I almost fell over. Sir, it's your wife who's giving birth. He looked up, his eyes red and swollen. Kiki is in so much pain. This time, even Grandma couldn't bear it anymore, banging her cane on the floor. Useless! Sit still! Mr. Xie was scolded, but he still stared at the delivery room door, his face filled with such anguish as if he were the one inside. It wasn't until nearly dawn that the sound of a baby crying finally echoed from inside. At that moment, the hallway fell silent for a few seconds. Then the gentleman jumped up and rushed straight to the door. A nurse came out, smiling brightly. Congratulations, it's a very healthy baby girl. The gentleman stood frozen, as if in a daze. And my wife? Your wife is also doing very well. Only then did he truly breathe a sigh of relief, his legs trembling, almost giving way. I stood beside him, moved to tears. The young master jumped for joy. I have a little sister now. Grandma couldn't stop smiling, continuously handing out red envelopes to everyone in the hospital. And me? I looked at the bonus money that had just been transferred to my account, tears almost welling up in my eyes. It's true. Life isn't unfair to me after all. Since the birth of our little daughter, the entire Shea family has completely transformed into a true, doting father. Especially Mr. Shea. Before, he was the cold, taciturn CEO type. But now, as soon as work is over, he rushes straight home to hold his baby. Even during meetings, he checks the camera feed from the nursery. Once, during a board meeting, he heard the nanny send a recording of his daughter crying, and he immediately stood up, ignoring all the shareholders, and coldly said, "Meeting adjourned." The old directors in the meeting room looked at each other in bewilderment, while Mr. Xie had already gotten into his car and gone home. At that moment, I was carrying our little daughter for a walk in the garden. She was only a month old, but already fair-skinned and soft like a little ball of dough, with round eyes just like Mrs. Xie's. Every time she smiled, the whole family melted. Mr. Xie rushed over as soon as he entered the door. "Where's my daughter?" Before I could even hand her over, he carefully embraced the little girl. His movements were clumsy yet so gentle, as if he were afraid of hurting her. The little girl giggled as soon as she saw her father. The gentleman's eyes softened instantly. "My daughter missed Daddy, didn't she?" I stood beside him, feeling goosebumps all over. Who could believe that the man who had once been so cold and intimidating to his business partners was now playing hide-and-seek with his daughter? The madam was being meticulously cared for after giving birth. Her grandmother sent all sorts of tonics every day, and the gentleman had practically read every book on postpartum care for wives in the world. One night, I went down to the kitchen for a drink and found him sitting there taking notes. The chicken stew shouldn't have too much oil. Kiki didn't sleep well tonight. I watched from behind, my mouth twitching uncontrollably. It's true that when you're in love, you learn anything. The madam, on the other hand, looked increasingly radiant. After giving birth, she was softer than before, and her whole being exuded the gentle charm of a young mother. Every time she sat by the window holding her baby, the sunlight falling on her face was so beautiful that I was left speechless. As for the husband, needless to say, his eyes were glued to his wife, almost unable to look away. Once I overheard them talking in the children's room. The wife was bending down to lull the baby to sleep, and she asked softly, "You like daughters that much?" The husband stood behind her, hugging her, his chin resting on her shoulder. "I like you. That's why I want a daughter who's like you." I was standing outside the door and almost dropped my baby bottle. Good heavens, this house is getting more and more disrespectful when it comes to talking. But even though it's fun, there's one person who's starting to feel resentful. The little young master is jealous. Before, the whole family revolved around him. Now that the little lady has been born, everyone is cuddling her, so the little boy is starting to feel left out. That day, I went into the room and found him sitting in the corner, hugging a pillow, looking sad. "What's wrong?" he mumbled, his head bowed. "Does everyone dislike me anymore?" My heart melted instantly. This child had lacked a sense of security since he was little, and now with the baby, he was overthinking things. Before I could even comfort him, I heard footsteps behind me. The gentleman stood at the door, silent for a few seconds, then walked over and knelt down in front of the boy. "Xiao Bao?" The boy looked up, his eyes red and swollen. The gentleman stroked his head, his voice low but gentle. "You and your sister are both part of our family. Dad won't stop loving you just because you have a sister." The young master pursed his lips. "Really?" This time, the lady also came over, carrying the little girl. She placed her in the boy's arms and smiled. "Your little sister likes you the most." The little girl seemed to understand, and as soon as she was in her brother's arms, she grinned widely. The little boy immediately hugged his sister, his face a mixture of tension and joy. You smiled at her!" The whole family burst out laughing. From that day on, the young master completely transformed into a doting older brother. Every day after school, he would run home as fast as he could. He wouldn't even finish his homework before wanting to hug his sister. If anyone touched his sister, he would immediately bristle like a protective mother hen. But the biggest change was still between the master and his wife. They seemed to have finally made up for all the misunderstandings of the past years. Their gazes towards each other were always so gentle that no one else could intrude. Once, while I was cleaning the windows in the hallway, I accidentally saw them in the garden. The mistress was sitting on a swing, holding their daughter while she slept. The master approached from behind, gently draped a coat over her shoulders, and then bent down to kiss his wife's forehead. The afternoon sun filled the garden. Climbing roses covered the trellis. The whole scene was so beautiful it was like a painting. I stood watching from afar and unconsciously smiled. Who would have thought that the marriage once ridiculed by the upper class would end up being the happiest it could be? And I, Wang Chuehua, the maid and matchmaker of the village, finally achieved success and fame. However, just as I was about to return to my hometown to retire, the madam hugged the little young lady and looked at me expectantly. "Aunt Wang, why don't you stay a few more years?" The young master immediately clung to my leg. "Don't go, Auntie." Even the little young lady babbled and reached out her hand towards me. The gentleman behind me cleared his throat and calmly added, "Doubled the salary." I was silent for 3 seconds. Then I immediately sat down, hugged the little young lady close, and nodded seriously. The young lady is right. How can I rest assured returning to my hometown with such a young child? So my plan to go back to my hometown to grow vegetables and raise chickens was postponed again. To be honest, after living in the Xie family's house for so long, I'm starting to feel like this place is my second home. Every morning I go downstairs and hear the little lady babbling, demanding to be held, hear the young master arguing with his sister over toys, and see Mr. and Mrs. Xie sitting together having breakfast. Suddenly, this large villa feels much warmer. The little lady is growing up so fast. As soon as she learned to walk, she started causing chaos in the house. Her short legs toddled everywhere, reaching out to hug everyone she saw. But she loved to cling to Mr. Xi the most. Every afternoon after work, as soon as Mr. Xi entered the door, she would shout, "Daddy!" Then she would rush to hug his legs like a little ball of dough. Mr. Xi's heart would melt instantly. He wouldn't even have time to put down his briefcase before bending down to pick her up high. "Does my little darling miss Daddy?" The little girl hugged her father's neck, giggling, and even playfully tugged at his tie, crumpling it up. In the past, anyone who dared to wrinkle the gentleman's clothes would have been scared to tears long ago. But now, he just smiled helplessly, letting his daughter play. The Furen, sitting beside them, chuckled at the father and daughter. "You're spoiling her too much." The gentleman's expression remained unchanged. "Daughters should be spoiled." The young master immediately protested. "What about me?" The gentleman turned to look at the boy, remained silent for a few seconds, then calmly replied, "You're a boy." The young master choked, turning to hug his wife's leg and complain. "Mommy, Kiki, Daddy favors daughters over sons." The whole family burst into laughter. I was standing in the kitchen listening, laughing so hard I almost dropped my ladle. But the fun didn't last long before another little disaster appeared at the Jie family's house. The little girl started imitating me. The thing is, because I carry her everywhere every day, she's picked up my hometown accent. The other day, Mr. J was having a very serious online meeting in his study when the little girl, clutching her teddy bear, toddled in. She put her hands on her hips, stared at the screen, and shouted loudly, "Dad, hurry up and eat! Aren't you going to starve to death if you keep meeting all the time?" The entire meeting room fell silent. The senior executives exchanged glances, no one daring to speak. Mr. Shea was silent for a few seconds, then calmly turned off the camera. Then he turned to look at his daughter, who was grinning widely in front of him. "Who did you learn that from?" The little girl immediately pointed to the door. "Aunt Wang!" I was eavesdropping outside when I was so scared I turned and ran away. As a result, that evening, Mr. Wang still seriously sought me out for a talk. "Aunt Wang!" I immediately straightened up. "Mr. Wang, I know I was wrong." He rubbed his forehead helplessly. "From now on, please be more careful with your words in front of her." Before I could even nod, the little girl hugged Mr. Wang's leg and looked up to defend me. "Aunt Wang is right. Dad's meetings are really long." Mr. Wang lowered his head to look at his daughter, finally completely at a loss. The madam, standing beside him, laughed so hard she leaned back in the sofa. Those days were so peaceful that sometimes I felt it was unreal. Until one day, the madam suddenly fainted in the living room. At that moment, I was peeling fruit when I heard the young master scream, "Mother Kiki!" I ran outside and saw the madam had collapsed onto the sofa, her face pale. The master had just returned from work, and his expression immediately changed. "Call a doctor!" The whole house was in chaos in an instant. The young lady was so frightened she burst into tears, while the young master stood frozen, his eyes red and swollen. The master carried the madam upstairs, his hands visibly trembling. My heart ached watching him. Fortunately, the doctor just chuckled after examining her. "It's nothing. It's just that the madam is pregnant for the second time and her body is a little tired." The room fell silent for a few seconds. My jaw dropped. A second pregnancy? The master was also stunned. The mistress, lying on the bed, blushed, clearly unaware of the news herself. The first to react was the young master. "Are we going to have another sibling?" The little girl didn't understand either, but seeing her brother exclaim, she clapped her hands in response. "A sibling! A sibling!" The master stood by the bed for a long time before regaining his composure. Then he bent down and hugged his wife tightly, his voice hoarse. "You've worked so hard." The mistress leaned against her husband's chest and smiled softly. Outside the door, I watched the whole family and unconsciously smiled along. It seems my retirement plans will have to be postponed for a very, very long time.